He was young, maybe 23, with a thin mustache and an expression of careful neutrality. 29th Infantry, the British officer asked. His accent made the words sound clipped, formal. That's right, Morrison said. You're from Gold Beach. 50th Division. We're meant to link up with your chaps around Port-en-Bessin. He glanced at the smoke rising from the direction of Omaha. Rough go yesterday? Morrison thought of the beach, the bodies in the surf, the 6 hours of hell before they'd finally gotten off the sand. Yeah, he said. Rough. The British lieutenant nodded once, as if Morrison had confirmed something he already knew. Right then. We're pushing toward Bayous. Your command know we're in the area. They do now, Morrison said. The lieutenant smiled slightly, not quite friendly, not quite distant. Good show. Carry on. He turned to his men, said something Morrison couldn't hear, and the patrol moved past, heading west. Morrison watched them go. His corporal, Eddie Hayes from Brooklyn, came up beside him. That's it. That's the British. What were you expecting? I don't know. More British, I guess. They look just like us. Different helmets, Morrison said. Different uniforms. Did you see their rifles? Lee Enfields, Hayes said. My dad carried one in the last war. Said they're good guns. Just slow. Bolt action. Morrison nodded. The British were moving through the hedgerows with careful precision, each man covering the next, their spacing perfect. Professional. Controlled. They look like they know what they're doing. So do we, Hayes said, but there was a question in his voice. Morrison didn't answer. He was thinking about Omaha Beach, about the chaos and terror and desperate scrambling. These British troops moved like they were on parade, even here, even now. It was different. He couldn't say if it was better or worse, just different. By mid-morning, Morrison's platoon had moved 2 miles inland and encountered British forces 3 more times. Each encounter followed a similar pattern: careful identification, brief exchange, continuation. The British were polite, efficient, and utterly unruffled by the war happening around them. It was starting to unnerve the Americans. Private First Class Tommy Chen, a radio man from San Francisco, put it into words during a break in a farmyard. They're too calm, he said, watching a British squad brew tea, actually brew tea, in the ruins of a barn while German artillery rumbled in the distance. Don't they know we're in a war? The British had set up a small stove, produced tea from somewhere, and were passing around metal cups while their sergeant studied a map. One of them was smoking a pipe. A pipe. Morrison had seen men smoke cigarettes under fire, sure, but a pipe suggested leisure time, contemplation, a Sunday afternoon. Maybe that's just how they are, Morrison said. It's weird, Chen insisted. We're all jumping at every sound, and they're having a tea party. A British soldier, a corporal, stocky and middle-aged, overheard and walked over, cup in hand. Fancy a brew? He asked, offering the tea to Chen. Chen took it, sniffed it suspiciously. Is this really tea? Course it's tea. What else would it be? I don't know. Medicine? Fuel? The British corporal laughed, a short bark of amusement. You Yanks and your coffee. Can't function without it, can you? We're the same with tea. Keeps you steady. He tapped his temple. Settles the nerves. Chen sipped the tea, made a face. It's hot. That's rather the point. Morrison accepted a cup when it was offered. The tea was strong, bitter, nothing like the sweet iced tea his mother made back in Virginia. But it was hot, and the British corporal was right. There was something steadying about it, about the ritual of stopping, brewing, drinking, continuing. The British had been at war for 5 years now. Maybe this was how you survived that long. You made tea, you kept routines, you stayed human. How long you been fighting? Morrison asked the corporal. Since 1940. Dunkirk, North Africa, Sicily, now here. The corporal said it flatly, without pride or complaint, just facts. You? 2 days. The corporal studied Morrison's face, then nodded. You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Either way, keep your head down and your rifle clean. He finished his tea, collected his cup, and returned to his squad. Hayes leaned close to Morrison. 4 years of combat, and he's brewing tea in a barn. Either they're crazy or we are. Maybe both, Morrison said. The differences became more apparent as the day wore on. Morrison's platoon was attached to a British company for a push toward a crossroads 2 miles south. The British captain, a tall, thin man named Pemberton, briefed the combined force with the same tone Morrison's high school principal had used when explaining detention policy. Calm, measured, slightly bored. The objective is this crossroads, Pemberton said, pointing at his map. Jerry's got a machine gun position here, possibly a mortar team here. We'll advance in 2 columns, suppress the machine gun, and clear the position. Questions? Morrison raised his hand. What if they've got more than 1 machine gun? Then we'll suppress both, Pemberton said, as if this were obvious. The key is to maintain formation and not bunch up. Jerry loves it when you bunch up. Makes his job easier. Morrison had a dozen more questions. What about flanking fire? What about reinforcements? What about artillery support? But Pemberton had already moved on, issuing orders to his platoon leaders with the same unhurried precision. The British soldiers listened, nodded, checked their weapons with practiced efficiency. No one seemed nervous. No one seemed excited. They just seemed ready. The American platoon leader, Lieutenant Kowalski, pulled Morrison aside. What do you think? I think they've done this before, Morrison said. So have we. Not like this. Not 4 years' worth. Kowalski frowned. You think we should follow their lead? Morrison considered. The British approach was methodical, careful, almost cautious. The American way, at least how they'd been trained, was to hit hard and fast, overwhelm the enemy with aggression and firepower. Different philosophies, different experiences. I think we should watch and learn, Morrison finally said. The advance began at noon. The British moved forward in textbook formation, each squad covering the next, using every bit of cover. They moved slowly, too slowly, Morrison thought at first. His instinct was to rush, to get across the open ground quickly, but the British took their time, and as they moved, Morrison began to see why. They never exposed themselves unnecessarily. They used the terrain perfectly. When they encountered resistance, they didn't charge forward. They stopped, assessed, brought up support weapons, and suppressed the enemy position before advancing. It was like watching a machine operate, each part moving in coordination with the others.
On May 10, 1940, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister of Great Britain. Churchill's first address to Parliament as Prime Minister was not a speech of soaring rhetoric or empty promises. I am going to make a name for myself. Young Winston, barely 6 years old, declared this to his long-suffering nanny. Bold words for a boy his age. But this wasn't just childish boasting. This was a glimpse of the iron will that would define Winston Churchill. Born into privilege, Churchill's early life wasn't all sunshine and roses. A distant father, a mother more interested in parties than parenting, and a stammer that plagued his speech. These could have broken a lesser spirit. Not Churchill. He fought back, his rebellious streak already showing. He devoured books, soaking up history and dreaming of glory. Even as a boy, Churchill displayed the traits that would mark his leadership. Courage, determination, and a refusal to back down from a challenge. Harrow School, the hallowed ground of the British elite, wasn't exactly Churchill's cup of tea. He struggled with the classics, preferring the battlefield tales of history and the soaring rhetoric of great speeches. Yet even within the rigid confines of Harrow, Churchill's spirit found its outlet. He excelled at history and English, his natural flair for language blossomed. Sandhurst, the Royal Military Academy, was more to his liking. Here, surrounded by the clang of swords and the smell of gunpowder, Churchill thrived. He embraced the discipline and rigor, excelling in his studies and proving himself a natural leader among his peers. He graduated in 1895, eager to test his mettle on the world stage. Undeterred, Churchill sought out adventure, using his family connections to secure postings in Cuba and India. These early experiences would shape Churchill's worldview. Cuba, 1895, a young Churchill, barely out of Sandhurst, found himself in the midst of a brutal colonial war. He witnessed the horrors of conflict, the courage of soldiers on both sides, and the messy realities of empire. It was a far cry from the parade grounds of Sandhurst, but it was an education no textbook could provide. Then came South Africa and the Boer War. Churchill, now a war correspondent, found himself captured and imprisoned, but captivity couldn't hold him. He escaped, embarking on a daring journey across enemy territory. This audacious escape made him a national hero. These early experiences forged in Churchill the steely resolve and unwavering spirit that would define his later years. Churchill's early political career was a roller coaster of triumphs and setbacks. He rose quickly, his charisma and sharp intellect propelling him through the ranks, but his blunt style and willingness to challenge the status quo also made him enemies. The disastrous Gallipoli campaign during World War I, for which he took responsibility, led to his demotion. It was a crushing blow. He resigned from the government and returned to the trenches, seeking solace in the heat of battle. But even in the darkest hours, Churchill's spirit remained unbroken. He refused to be silenced. He wrote prolifically, his words a scathing critique of government incompetence and a rallying cry for action. This was Churchill in the wilderness, a lion cast out but not defeated. As the 1930s dawned, a dark cloud settled over Europe. Nazi Germany, fueled by hatred and militarism, rearmed and expanded its territory. Yet many in Britain clung to appeasement, hoping to avoid another devastating war. Churchill, however, saw the danger clearly. He warned of Hitler's ambitions, his voice a lone cry in the wilderness. His warnings went unheeded. But Churchill refused to be silenced. He used his platform in Parliament and his pen to expose the Nazi threat. Then, in 1939, Hitler's armies marched into Poland. War had come again. On May 10, 1940, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister of Great Britain. Churchill's first address to Parliament as Prime Minister was not a speech of soaring rhetoric or empty promises. It was a stark assessment of the perilous situation facing Britain. "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat," he declared. But he also offered something more: hope. Churchill's leadership during World War II was nothing short of inspirational. He rallied the British people, his words a beacon of defiance in the face of Nazi aggression. He never wavered, even when Britain stood alone against the Nazi war machine. His speeches, broadcast across the airwaves, became a lifeline for a nation fighting for its survival. Churchill's strategic brilliance was also evident. He recognized the importance of air power, creating the Royal Air Force that would win the Battle of Britain. He forged a close alliance with the United States, securing vital aid and support. Churchill's wartime leadership was not without its flaws, but his courage and determination never faltered. Churchill's wartime leadership wasn't all grim determination and stoic pronouncements. He was also a master of language, using wit and humor to rally the nation and deflate his enemies. His speeches are legendary, full of memorable phrases that captured the spirit of the times. When told that his habit of napping during the day was causing concern, he quipped, "You must sleep sometime between lunch and dinner, and no halfway measures will do." His barbs at Hitler and the Nazis were equally sharp. Churchill's wit wasn't just for entertainment, it was a weapon, a way to boost morale, expose hypocrisy, and remind everyone that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit could still find reasons to laugh. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, Winston Churchill's place in history was secure. He had led Britain to victory in its darkest hour, becoming a global symbol of freedom and defiance. His leadership during World War II had been instrumental in defeating Nazi Germany and saving the world from tyranny. But Churchill's legacy extends far beyond his wartime leadership. He was a prolific writer, winning the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953 for his historical and biographical works. He was a gifted painter, finding solace and expression in his art. His speeches continue to inspire, his words a reminder of the power of language to move and motivate. His courage and determination in the face of adversity serve as an example to us all. Never give in, never give in, never, 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 in nothing, great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honour and good sense, Churchill famously declared. These words, spoken at Harrow School in 1941, encapsulate the essence of the man. Churchill's life was a testament to the power of perseverance. From his difficult childhood to his early setbacks in politics, from the horrors of World War I to the existential threat of World War II, he faced each challenge with unwavering resolve. His unflinching spirit, his unwavering belief in himself and his country, and his refusal to accept defeat are qualities that continue to resonate today. In a world facing new challenges and uncertainties, Churchill's example serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope.